Welcome back, everyone. I just recently watched a podcast with Jason Whitlock. I normally don't agree with Jason Whitlock. Some of his takes I agree with, and some I just don't. But for the most part, I don't really agree with him. And earlier on, anybody who spoke out against anything of Coach Prime was deemed as a hater. You couldn't even critique anything that he did because he's a black man. He's coming to Boulder, Colorado to make a change for the football team and for that town and to revamp the program. We get all that. And we looked at Coach Prime's success at Jackson State, and we as a conglomerate, as onlookers, we were looking at the situation as if okay, the same success he had at Jackson State, he may one day bring that here to Colorado in a Power Five conferences. So with that said, I'm a victim of, as we all are. We are all victims of circumstance, and we can become prisoners of the moment. With that said, I don't chastise anyone from having a change of thought or reevaluating their thinking process or reevaluating some of the decisions they have made before in the past. It's common to do that. And that's what entails, that's what's part of being a critical thinker. It entails that type of process. In the beginning, when Coach Prime came to Colorado and he brought his quote unquote Louis luggage, I was fine with that. I believe that every coach has the ability to do whatever they need to do in order to win. It's a what have you done for me lately kind of business. We have seen a slew of coaches who come to programs who are not successful in the first couple of years, and a lot of them are gone. So Prime is in the business of winning, and we all wanted to see him win. But what I have seen transpiring for the past couple of weeks has been sort of troubling to me as a fan of Coach Prime. I'm not against him, and don't misconstrue or take this video as me attacking him or me being a hater. I'm not a hater. I don't hate anybody. Anyone has the right and within their will to critique anything. People can critique me, but I just want you to critique me fairly and objectively. I don't want you to critique me based upon an emotional response off of impulse and say, hey, he's a hater. That's too easy to do. It kills public discourse and it kills dialogue and it kills debate when you just hurl out names. You have to specifically say why someone's a hater. And you also have to assume that the person is hating because you know what's in their head. The term hating has it has remnants of jealousy attached to it. Usually when people hate, it's because there's a jealous trait. There's some level of jealousy that's embodied within that individual that propels them to operate on a level called hate. You have to hate somebody that you often are jealous of or envy, or that you wish you can be, but you cannot. And so you hate. But that's hard to prove. So when you say hate, refrain from using the word hate and just talk about the points you disagree with. Just talk about the points you disagree with. The game against UCLA is the turning point of the season for me. It's not their first loss to Oregon. It's not even their loss to USC. It's not their meltdown of the Stanford lead when they were up by 29 points by halftime. That's not it. Those are not the turning points. The turning point for me was this UCLA game. And that's why I encourage everybody, don't ever be a bandwagon or a follower in terms of who you listen to. Always taking all information, taking everything, even if there's something out there that you disagree with, listen to it entirely so you can gain the full context of why somebody is saying what they're saying. Because if you totally dismiss a message based upon the messenger, or you already have your mind made up that this person doesn't know what they're talking about, then you may miss out on some important, critical elements of what they're saying that can probably help you or lead or guide you into making a wise decision. We are informative beings. All right. Let me pause this. This thing is making noise right now. We're all informative beings. We base our judgments on information, and we base our judgments based upon past experiences. That's how we move forward in life. The Dion Prime movement that began the way it began, personally with me, is not the same as it was in the beginning. And it's not because of their wins and losses. That's not it. It's a lot of things that have came up. On one side, you have a group of people who are racially stirred up because they like Prime. They like what he represents. He represents one of quote unquote us. He's a black man. He speaks with the verbiage. He has the lingo. He has the charisma. He has the look. He has the quote unquote swag. He's a Hall of Famer. He played in the NFL. He has all of that going for him. And he draws a lot of connection. He has the gift of gab. He just has that personality that's magnetic. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's a good thing to have. However, in having that type of magneticism, it can often lead to people following you who are not basing their following on full blown out objectivity. You're not being totally objective, because emotions, which stands for energy in motion, hence the term emotions, when your energy is siphoned by a person's magneticism, your emotions ends up being the impediment clouding sound judgment and sound reasoning. Okay? I want you guys to follow me here. There's a guy named Ticket. You guys probably know who he is. His social media name is Ticket. He gives out social media stuff every day. Great guy. I love his energy. I listen to him almost every day. I've been following him probably for about a month and a half now, I believe. I like his content. I don't listen to everything he shows. There's certain social media current events that I don't care for on his channel, but there's some that I do follow. I like his energy. I kind of like the fact how he can switch up he speaks Spanish. He can speak Spanish and understand Spanish. He can go back to speaking English. He's a very smart guy. He's 6'10". I think he played, I don't know if he played in the NBA or played overseas, but he used to be a basketball player. And his channel, he's a Prime supporter, 100%. And I'm a Prime supporter too. But this is when, as the season starts to roll along, you're going to get different spectrums of Prime supporters. You're not going to get a cluster of people just following him blindly, with their eyes wide shut. You're going to have people that are following him, but now they're they're thinking now. For the most part, on Ticket's channel, he attacks Jason Whitlock a lot. And rightfully so, he has the right to. Whitlock does say certain things that are hypocritical. There have been certain things about Jason Whitlock's past that Ticket brings up, and it's justifiable. All that stuff, I get it. And personally, I don't like Jason Whitlock. I don't. I really don't. I don't like him. Well, I shouldn't say I don't like him. I don't like a lot of his views. I don't know him personally. I've never hung out with him. I've never had a personal engagement with him. This is just what I see on social media in terms of the content that he puts out. Jason Whitlock calls people who follow Prime racial idolaters. Well, I'm not a racial idolater. I don't believe in anything. I believe in myself. I don't believe in any religion. I don't believe in any gods. I don't believe in any of that. I don't follow any religious books. I don't any of that. I may refer to certain religious texts to make a point, but I don't follow anything. I follow myself. I think most of you guys who know me know that most, if not all of the social constructs that are put in this reality are put here as a control mechanism over humanity. So a lot of people who throw out God are using that for another reason. It's not for what you see, what it's portrayed to be. It's not what it's made out to be, because no one knows of any God. You can't read a book and say that book was written by a God. Like, you weren't there. You don't know that. These are all books written by men. And most of the contents of the Bible are taken from prehistoric texts that predate the Bible itself. The Bible is pretty much a plagiarized text that's been taken from old ancient books. If you do your research, you'll know this, but I'm not here to discourage anybody from their religion. Believe what you want, but I'm here to tell you that I'm not into any religion. So when Jason Whitlock uses religious verbiage or religious terminology to cast an identification over a group of people that follow Prime and is calling them racial idolaters, that's not fair. There are a lot of white people that like Prime. I don't like Prime just because he's black. I just like him because it's him. I just want to see him be successful. The same way I wanted to see Brady be successful. He's a white quarterback. I just follow people. I don't follow the race. So you have to be very careful to generalize, paint a broad brush over people that follow Prime as racial idolaters. Then you have Jason Whitlock, who uses God for most of his foundational topics and speeches. He says, I stand on value, believe in God. Well, I can say that the people who follow you, Jason Whitlock, are idolaters as well, because they're following a text and they're following a rhetoric out of a book that they don't know for sure was written by some God, some benevolent being. Okay, so the name calling doesn't have to be used at all. Let's just stick with the facts, and let's just stick with the circumstances that we see. Let's get away from calling people racial idolaters or racial this or racial that or left wing or right wing or whatever that is. What I've done, and this is where I've always been, you take in all information. That's the only way you can make an informed decision. Because if you only take one part of the equation, you're missing out on the other half. You have to fully be harmonized in your decision making, and it takes both sides to collectively decipher in order to come to your conclusion. From all of the messages that I've read online, from all of the things that I've heard from sports pundits talking about Colorado, and I've never played football. I've never played in the NFL. I didn't even play high school football. I played in middle school. I played basketball in high school. So I'm not a football expert. I've never coached. I never did any of that. I've put out a series of videos questioning the coaching acumen of the Colorado Buffaloes team. And here I'm going to say it right now. I do apologize to Sean Lewis. I've been on here. I have blamed him for the offensive imbalance of Colorado. I have criticized him heavily of blaming him, assuming that he had and has an agenda, using Colorado as a stepping stool for a head coaching gig somewhere else. I have blamed him for many of the downfalls of the offensive scheme as it pertains to Colorado being a pass happy team that literally passes 95%, 96, 97% of the time. And I apologize for that. That's an error on my part. And we as people have to be able to find our mistakes, detect our mistakes, reflect upon our comments, reflect upon our thoughts, and be better. Because once you know better, you do better. And once you find out new information, you have to be fluid enough to actually correct your information and move forward. That's what a truth seeker does. That's what critical thinkers do. Critical thinkers are not people who automatically know everything. Critical thinkers are ones that continue to think, and they continue to take in information. They are data collecting content in order to make an informed decision or an informed judgment. So with that being said, After all that I've heard and seen, I'm going to be coming to my own decision, to my own turning point. Those of you guys know that whenever you watch a movie or read a book or anything, whenever there's a narrative, there's always a turning point. It's usually called the climax. If you're an English person, you know what that means. The climax is the turning point of a story. Well, in this Dion story, from the beginning of the football season, Coach Prime and Colorado Buffaloes, I'm at a turning point now. My turning point doesn't mean that I'm going against Colorado. My turning point does not mean that I'm going against Coach Prime. My turning point doesn't mean that I hate Coach Prime. My turning point doesn't mean that I'm a hater. My turning point means that I'm starting to consider the mindset that I had initially about Colorado Buffaloes and Coach Prime. Now we're starting to hit the turning point, the apex of that turning point, where now I'm having a mindset shift solely based upon the information that I've been gathering over weeks and weeks. I've heard Ticket. I know Ticket loves Prime, and I love him too. I hear Jason Whitlock. Initially, I didn't agree with Whitlock about the things he was saying about Prime because it was too early for me. I'm like, you don't even know this dude. Give him a chance. He's taken over a team that's 1-11. Well, he was taking over a team that was 1-11 last year. But the players are totally different. It's a different team. It's not the same players. So it's not like he has the same players that were 1-11 and now they're 4-4. He's coaching a school that had a record of 1-11, but with a slew of new players. The whole team is revamped. Nobody on that team was there from last year, with the exception of 2 or 3 players, I believe, or two, Woods and Harrison, I believe, the tight end and the safety, Woods. What I saw at the UCLA game is the turning point for me. I'm going to tell you why. Because I've never been so passionate about anything in my life. There's something that went off inside me. And you guys saw the videos I kept putting out. Like, I couldn't sleep. It was like 2. I kept thinking, I'm like, there's something off here. There's something not right. Colorado, the football team is too good to be losing games like this. They could be undefeated if they played their cards right. Not once at the time when I was reflecting and analyzing everything that I've captured over the weeks watching this football team, not once did I even question the football acumen of Coach Prime. He's Coach Prime. He's a Hall of Famer, right? But does that mean that just because he's a Hall of Fame coach that he's going to be a great coach? There are many great players who are great players, but they couldn't coach. They couldn't coach. Coaching is a difference in being a great player and being a great coach. Most great coaches were not great players. Most great coaches were not great players. As a matter of fact, most coaches didn't even hardly play in the higher level. Most great coaches didn't even play in the professional ranks. Most great coaches sometimes barely played in college. They didn't get playing time, but they were thinkers. They knew how to lead men. The hype behind Coach Prime, in my honest opinion, has clouded a lot of our judgments about what's going on. What I saw happening in the UCLA game was the straw that broke the camel's back, if I could use that proverbial saying. Because throughout the season, I've been seeing things, but because of my affinity to Prime, I never even questioned him. I just kept looking at other people. Why is he doing this? What about this coach? What's the defensive coach doing? But enough is enough. And I've had my epiphany, and I'm going to say my truth. I may get criticized for this. You may call me a hater. It's okay. I accept it. But rather than calling me a hater, just pick out and choose what I'm saying that you don't agree with. Number 1, Colorado is playing UCLA at the Rose Bowl. UCLA is probably the toughest defensive line that Colorado's offensive line has faced all year. I'll probably say Oregon is a second. The Colorado Buffaloes, they only attempted 11 running plays. And they attempted 43 pass plays. The 11 running plays that they ran is probably the most that they've run all year. And did you also know that on this losing streak that Colorado Buffaloes have been on, do you know that the average run attempt in terms of yards has been 4.2 yards a carry? Did you know that? You wouldn't know that though. Because they don't highlight the run. They don't even attempt to run. So I started to ask myself why. I also made a video actually showing the chart of how many rush attempts the running backs had and how many yards they ran. All the running backs had positive yardage. McCaskill, 7 yards a carry. I think Hankerson or Wilkerson, one of the two, I think they had 5 yards a carry. Wilkerson he had 3 rushes for 8 yards. Maybe about almost 2 yards, maybe, 2 point something yards a carry. Dylan Edwards, he had 3 rushes for 12 yards. So I started to ask myself as a critical thinker, because at this point now, my emotional charge towards Prime and my affinity is starting to go down. Doesn't mean I'm not supporting him. It just means that emotion, sometimes it's not good for men to think with their emotions. You have to think with your brain. Activate the left hemisphere of your brain and think logically. Right now, I've been exercising the right part of my brain, which is responsible for creativity and imagination. It's imaginary. And you need both parts. Both parts of the brain function and give you harmony. But when one side is overused, it clouds the other side. So the left side of my brain has not been activated, and it's starting to be activated now. So I start to put 2 and 2 together. And it's not because Jason Whitlock said it. As a matter of fact, I had a commenter on one of my videos named Stan. He left a message that resonated with me because I was already kind of thinking this, but I was just afraid to say it. Because I felt like, does anybody else see what I'm seeing? Let me wait on it. Let me wait and see if somebody else picks up on it first before I say something. Guys, Coach Prime is a great motivator. He is not a good coach. He's not even remotely a great coach. Some of the points that Jason Whitlock brought up were very valid. What coach who knows that their quarterback is getting destroyed would continue to pass the ball? Now remember, initially I was blaming Sean Lewis for this. It's not Sean Lewis's fault. You know why it's not Sean Lewis's fault? At Kent State, the school that Sean Lewis came from, he was the head coach over there. He ran the ball 48% of the time. So it's not Sean Lewis. It's Coach Prime directing Sean Lewis to make sure you put the ball in my son's hands. And like a yes man, Sean Lewis is going to do exactly what Coach Prime tells him to do. I had a commenter who said something to that effect. I forgot your name. I'm going to give credit to you. That's where I got that from, and it made sense. It's not Coach Sean Lewis. It's Coach Prime. Then I start to ask myself, well, Coach Prime is a smart man. He knows football. I've seen him analyze NFL tape when he was on the NFL Network. He knows when a team is imbalanced. But what's the difference with Coach Prime at Colorado and Coach Prime sitting behind a computer on a TV show analyzing NFL? The difference is that now Coach Prime is coaching his son. There's a high degree of bias that's involved. Coach Prime is thinking with his emotions, which is what's making him a bad coach. Y'all know this. Come on, guys. Don't call me a hater. Y'all know he's not coaching well. He continues to put the pressure on the offensive coordinator to put the ball in his son's hands, to pad the stats of his son. I was already saying this. I said this way before Jason Whitlock said it. I said this on an old video. I think it was after the Stanford game. I was like, hey, they're up by 29 points. Why are you coming out after halftime passing? Run the ball, kill the clock. Then something clicked in my head. I was like, hey, they're trying to pad the stats of Shedeur. But when I said they, I was still blinded by my affinity to Prime. I wasn't thinking that it was him. I kept thinking it's the play calling. The play caller is dumb. He's the one calling these pass plays. But we all know that a head coach makes the executive decisions. If a head coach sees that the offensive coordinator is not calling the right things, he can step in and say, hey, man, insert more running plays. Coach Prime doesn't care about the running plays. Coach Prime doesn't even care about the running backs on his team. I agree with Jason Whitlock when Jason Whitlock said that the team is starting to see a divide, that the only people that Coach Prime cares about on that team are Shedeur, number 1, Travis Hunter, number 2, and Shiloh, number 3. And everybody else is just disposable. Why do I say that? Well, I say that because you're throwing your offensive lineman under the bus. You're saying how you need to, you're talking about how you need to revamp your entire offensive line. How do you think that makes them feel? But you continually put them in situations that forces them to display their weakness versus putting them in situations to display their strengths. But why are you doing that, Coach Prime? You're doing that because you're trying to put the shine on your son, to prove to the Heisman voters that he's worthy. He's not winning the Heisman this year. Get that out of your head. He is not winning the Heisman. You know why he's not winning the Heisman, Coach Prime? It's because of you. Because if he was winning games, let's say you guys were winning games and you guys had a balanced offense, Shedeur's stats would be better. It'll be more balanced. He may not be throwing for over 500 and 600 yards. That's not sustainable. You're not going to do that every night. He's going to have pockets of games where he explodes in terms of yardage of passing. That's not going to be the norm, Coach Prime. You know what helps your team? You know what helps a member of your team get the Heisman? When your team is successful. If your team had a better record, if you guys weren't on 500 and you guys were actually winning and dominating games using the running game to set up the pass. So that's where it started with me. I stopped looking at the other coaches and started to look at Coach Prime and started to look at the connection between father and son. We've all been there. If you've ever coached Little League or coached your kids, you always wanted your kids to be the best, no matter what. You wanted to put your kid in the best position to excel. It's called being biased. That's not coaching. And Jason Whitlock used the term peewee coaching. And it sounds insulting, I know, because he's talking about Coach Prime. How dare he talk about Coach Prime that way? But it is. It is. You continue to pass while your kid is getting beat the hell up. And then it's 6 minutes left in the game. The score is like 20-something to 9, I believe. And you still have your son Shedeur in the game? For what, coach? To pad stats? Oh, why? You tell me. I don't want to assume. Why do you still have him in the game? Then, Coach Prime, in the press conference, he alludes to having to have his son get injected with painkillers. Think about that, folks. His son's not going to make it through the season. So when people like Jason Whitlock are using hyperbolic terminology, talking about what Coach Prime is doing in Colorado, calling it malpractice, there's a certain level of truth to that. That is a degree of coaching malpractice. Now, I know that kind of title is used to get clicks, to get people to click in to see what is he talking about, coaching malpractice? How is he coaching malpractice? He's just a coach. It's coaching malpractice, folks. If any other coach in America is doing what Coach Prime is doing, you guys would be ridiculing that coach. You cannot continue to run the same play and have your son beat down and beat up and beat down. You abandon the run saying that we can't run the ball. Then what makes you think you can pass the ball if you can't run? But you're okay with passing every down. But the stats show, the statistics shows that during this 1-4, the last 5 games, you guys are 1-4. The running game has, the few times you guys do run, it's earned 4.2 yards a carry. And that's with a limited sample size. Let me tell you guys something about football. When you have a small sample size of runs, and that small sample size shows a positive gain in it, 4.2 yards. It's not negative 4.2 yards. It's positive 4.2 yards. Do you know what happens as the game progresses on and you continue to run the ball? You start to wear down the defensive line. The defensive line starts to feel the girth, and the power of the offensive line. This is how you build confidence of your offensive line. You don't put them in a position to pass block the whole damn game. And then the fact that oftentimes you see Dylan Edwards running down the middle. Dylan Edwards is like 120 pounds soaking wet. This lets you know that Coach Prime is not coaching. He's focused on his son. His focus on putting the limelight on his son so his son could be drafted in the first round. And now, when people were saying this before, I turned ahead to that. I shunned the message of people saying that they will not be surprised if after Shedeur leaves for the NFL, Coach Prime will leave. People were mad when he left Jackson State. They said, "Oh, why did he leave?" And people were, people were torn. People say he should have stayed at Jackson State. I don't care about him leaving Jackson State. Quite frankly, I don't care about the HBCUs. I don't watch HBCUs. I could care less. I couldn't care less. I'm all for people getting job promotions, and to me, I just looked at him leaving Jackson State and coming to Colorado as a job promotion. He wants to go to a bigger top 5 school and coach kids. I truly believe that he loved working with kids. But what I'm starting to see is that he loves his sons more than the team. And the team sees that. The team sees that. Those other guys know that they're just collateral damage for the cause. And as the season progresses and goes on, we often like to inject God in everything and say things happen for a reason. Well, things do happen for a reason. And when things are happening, the circumstances are a means by which information is being conveyed, and you have to take in the information. See, initially, when game 1 started, when they first played their game against TCU, I didn't have information. I just say, okay, this is all I have. Game by game, I'm starting to collect my data, and everything is starting to make sense to me. Coach Prime coming to Colorado was a Heisman push for his son. That's why they're pass happy. That's why he does not run the ball. That's why he continues to put his son in harm's way. That's why he's the reason why Shedeur is getting killed. It's not the offensive line's fault. It's not the offensive line's fault. It's not the offensive line's fault. I'm going to say it again. It's not their fault. It's the coach's fault. It's Coach Prime's fault. It's not Sean Lewis's fault. Because Sean Lewis's track record shows that he's a 50-50 kind of guy. He ran the ball 48% of the time at Kent State. Who do you think is giving him the orders to pass the ball all the time? It's Coach Prime. And Coach Lewis doesn't want to lose his job, but I don't think Coach Lewis is going to come back. Not because he's a bad coach. He cannot operate underneath that type of tutelage where your head coach is demanding that you pass the ball on every play. The only person that can impact the father, that can impact Prime, is Shedeur. If Shedeur goes to the dad and says, "Dad, we got to run the ball some more to protect me. I'm taking too many hits," it has to come from Shedeur. But I doubt that it will. Like father, like son. And there's nothing wrong with having ego. Ego is what gets you far in life in certain situations. You don't become a great athlete without a degree of ego. You have to kind of think you're the greatest on the field or on the court or on the track, wherever you're at. There's a degree of ego that takes over you. You see it when Usain Bolt ran. You see it when these track athletes run. They come out there bouncing around because they believe in themselves. And that's understandable. I'm not going against people with ego. But with greatness comes ego. And it's hard to kind of pull back and say, "Hey, Dad, we got to run the ball." So Coach Prime is not a great coach. He's a great motivator. There's a difference. You can motivate, but if you don't know how to devise schemes and make critical decisions in game and have a connection with what's going on the field, then you're not a good coach. You're just doing the same thing to pad your son's stats. Remember, on the past video, I gave you guys a scenario. Put Coach Chip Kelly on a Colorado team with the same roster that Colorado has. Let's say Chip Kelly became the coach of Colorado with the same roster that Coach Prime has. Do you think after hit after hit, after sack, and after being hurried and being pressured and running for his life, do you think that Coach Chip Kelly is going to continue to run pass plays? Answer that question for me. If you can answer that question honestly, then you know what I'm talking about. See, Coach Prime cannot be above reproach. He could be criticized with anybody. He's a human being like anybody else. And when he's making decisions that are based upon emotion and bias towards his son at the expense of the team, throwing his coaches under the bus as well. They asked him a question about the coach. He's like, oh, no, you're not going to get me. I'm not going to answer that question, because that means that if I answer the question truthfully, it's my coach's fault. No. Prime is pointing the finger at everybody else. It's his fault. He's calling the plays. He's not calling the plays, but he's given the instruction to pass. Alton McCaskill, Dylan Edwards, you guys have to transfer. Hit the portal. Get out of Colorado. As long as Shedeur is there, get out of Colorado. Because it's not about y'all. It's about showcasing his son. His son is taking so much of a beating, he had to get injected with painkillers. And yet you leave him in with 6 minutes left in the game. The game is out of reach. Why is Shedeur still in the football game? Dad, why am I still in the game? Prime, you're killing your son. Is it about the team, Coach Prime, or is it about you? These are questions we have to ask ourselves. And people often like to use the term God and throw that out there and stuff like that. Look, I don't listen to when people talk about God. I listen to your character. I look at the choices that you make. I don't care about how many times you go to church. I don't care how many times you read the Bible. I don't care how many times you go to Bible study. I don't care about those things. What decisions are you making? Because if this is truly about a God movement, then you would do what's best for the team. Because those other players have parents. Just like you're a parent, Coach Prime, those other kids have parents too. Not every player on your team is Shedeur or Travis or Shiloh. But they deserve respect, and they deserve a level of dignity and honesty. You're not being honest with your team. You can't pass the ball like that and get your son beat. And then you have the nerve to talk about Heisman that you don't think about that. Coach Prime is talking about, I don't see any other Heisman candidate going through this. Your son is no longer a Heisman candidate. Get that out of your head. He's not within the Heisman. He's not even in the top running. He's done. You'll be very shocked if he even makes it through the season. Let's just hope he makes it through the season healthy, standing on his own 2 feet. That's the turning point for me, folks. After the UCLA game, that's the turning point for me. 3 out of the 4 defensive linemen are NFL prospects. They're demolishing your son. Jason Whitlock broke it down perfectly. He talked about having gap responsibilities. When you run the ball, it forces the defensive linemen to have gap responsibility. They have to kind of take into account that you may run. But when the defensive liners are standing, they're no longer in a stance. They're just standing. They're just rushing because they know what you're going to do, Coach Prime. That's sad. All of this is Coach Prime's fault. Many of you guys who are novices, who don't know the game, who are just pretty much leading with your emotions, and I get it. We've all been there. But I challenge everyone to put their emotions in check for a second and just look at Coach Prime as you would look at any other coach in college football. And you see what's happening right there in Boulder, Colorado. A pass-happy offense that refuses to run the ball. They lie with a narrative saying that the blockers can't run block. They can run block, because if they couldn't run block, they would not be averaging 4.2 yards a carry with a small sample size. You're killing the confidence of your team for the elevation of your loved sons, Travis Hunter, Shedeur Sanders, and Shiloh. You're playing favoritism, coach. You're playing favoritism. And it's a radical degree of favoritism. It's so obvious. You're not the first coach to coach your son, but be a coach. See the game, look at the game, and coach accordingly to what you see happening. Your son's getting blitzed. You don't see that? Other coaches are taking notes. You're just there with your hoodie on, with your glasses, sitting there cool like, we got this. That's called arrogance and ego. Every player on your team is not little Deons. They can't play like you. You had a talent, you had a gift that other players did not have. More than a motivator, you have to be a good coach to put your players and other assistant coaches in positions where they can feel good. Right now, your team is done mentally. I'm going to tell you why. Coach Lewis is not happy there anymore because now everyone's pointing the finger at him, saying that he needs to leave, that it's his fault. No. If it's Coach Lewis's fault, it's because it's Coach Prime's fault. So if Coach Lewis has to leave, Coach Prime has to leave too, because it's Coach Prime that's giving Coach Lewis the orders to be pass first. And not only pass first, pass only. They do not run. They only run just to say we ran the ball. And deep down, I think that Coach Prime is probably wishing that the run plays are not effective so he can justify never running the ball. But when a player runs for like 14 yards or 7 yards, like for instance, Alton McCaskill, he had 2 running plays and he gained 14 yards on those 2 runs. That's an average of 7 yards a carry. Coach Prime doesn't like that because now he gives people who are questioning Coach Prime's coaching acumen as to why you're not running, why are you not committing to it? Then he says, well, you got to have a running game to commit to. Yes, commit to it. You're passing. You definitely don't have a passing game. Look at your son. He's taking pain killer injections during a game. Are you kidding me? And then you leave him in at the last 6 minutes of the game. Are you serious, coach? If Shedeur was my son, I would have ran on the field and fought you, Coach Prime. You're trying to kill my son. But Shedeur is not my son. He's your son. He's your son, which is more an indictment on you as a father. What are you doing? Why are you putting your sons in harm's way? Oh, to build his stats up? He doesn't need his stats to be built up. He's going to be drafted in the NFL. He's going. We all know he's a good player. How much more do you want? What's the cost? Your son's health? Are you serious, Coach Prime? This is ridiculous. So everyone, stop blaming Coach Lewis, including myself. I'll stop blaming him. It's not him. He's being told what to do. And when it doesn't work, Coach Prime can sit back and say, well, these guys aren't athletic enough. We got to get some more dogs. It's not all about acquiring talent all the time, Coach Prime. It's about actually coaching. You can't have a prepackaged agenda and force feeding your agenda into the college football realm. It doesn't work that way. Especially your first year. How arrogant. You think you're going to just come in and just force Shedeur Sanders to be the Heisman Trophy winner the first year he's at Colorado? As if there's no one else on the team that exists. There's no other talent. Colorado has too much talent to be 4-4. I've always said that. The reason why they're 4-4 is the coaching ineptitude of Coach Prime, because he's not coaching. He's just motivating. He's just everything that Jason Whitlock said. Go look at his Fearless channel. He made this video about probably 16, 17, 18 hours ago. And this is a guy that I normally don't agree with. But when he was breaking this down, I'm like, man, I do not like to agree with this guy, but man, he's making some solid points. He's not attacking Deion as a person. He's attacking Deion's coaching practices. It's wrong, man. Y'all know it's wrong to put your son in harm's way like that because you're trying to pad his stats. And then if you think that I'm assuming or jumping to conclusion or I'm reaching, why would you leave him in? Listen to this. The son already gets injections at halftime because he's already beat down. He has too much pain. By halftime, Shedeur is limping around. After halftime, he's limping around the whole game. He gets an injection to numb the pain. The last 6 minutes of the game, you're getting blown out. The game is out of reach. You still leave him in? If you still think that that's okay, then I'm not the one. I'm not hating. I'm being objective. I'm looking at the circumstance. I'm taking in the information that I have, exactly what came out of Coach Prime's mouth, that his son had to get an injection because of the pain. I'm taking all that into consideration, and I'm making a judgment call. And I'm saying that that's why I believe that Coach Prime is doing these things to pad the stats of his son. And then he's still talking Heisman talk. You should dismiss those questions. If anybody talks about Shedeur, this, that, why even bring up the Heisman stuff? It lets you know where his head is at. Trust me, guys. He may not be there too long. Not because he gets fired. I think he may leave with his son. When his son leaves, he may leave too. And this is sad because a lot of people believe that he came to Boulder to stay. Not forever, of course, but at least to stay there at least a decade, at least half a decade. But I don't think he's gonna last that long because it's not genuine. It's not genuine at all. It's all about his son. It's all about, now that I know what the core purpose of him coming there was for, then I'm fine. It makes sense. And people wonder why Cormani McClain is not playing. Could it be a possibility that Cormani, he doesn't want Cormani to shine, to outshine Travis Hunter on the defensive side? Cormani was a 5-star recruit, and he doesn't even see the field. But you know who sees the field a lot? Travis Hunter, both on defense and offense. You would think that they had no other DBs. He plays every down. He may come out for a stretch to get a breather. He comes right back in. Yet Cormani, a freshman, just sits there. Doesn't play. A great talent just being wasted away. Alton McCaskill, great running back. Talent being wasted away because they all believed in Prime. I would tell any recruit that's thinking of going to Colorado right now to rethink your options. I hate to say that. I hate to say it because you could watch on other videos. I said that big loss, that lead that they lost to Stanford, I said it's okay. The meltdown is going to cause more recruits to come. I got over 7,000 views on that video. And I don't consider myself an expert YouTuber at all. As you can see, I'm sitting in my house in my robe just talking. I don't have the special effects to entice people to watch my videos. I just press record and start running my mouth. I don't have a script. I don't have anything. I don't have a producer. I don't have any of that stuff. I'm just one guy sitting in front of my phone, running my mouth. What do I know, right? But that's my turning point. I'm still going to be rooting for Colorado to do better. I'm rooting for Alton McCaskill. I'm rooting for Dylan Edwards. I'm rooting for the running backs. I'm rooting for the offensive line because they're the ones being thrown under the bus. The offensive line, for obvious reasons, and the running backs, because they're sitting there like, man, we don't get to run the ball. We can help out. So these players, they work extra hard in practice because they believe that if they work hard in practice, that they'll get to play. They don't get to play. How do you think that makes the players feel? How do you think it makes the players feel? This is disgusting, man. Coach Prime, you got to be better than this. You got to be better than it is. Your motives have been exposed. You came here to pad your son's stats at all costs. It's not about the team. It's about you and about your son. More about you. It's about your pride and your ego. But yeah, we can always throw the Christian card and God card in there to blind the followers that follow you. That's why I don't believe in anything. I just follow the information that I see, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'd rather die on my own sword than let my mind be siphoned by some external resource or external source and then get led by that. That's how people get caught into cults, and that's how people get caught into these false worshiping cliques. I don't do that. I like to follow successful people. And if they do something that I don't agree with, I call it out. And I do not agree with what Prime is doing right now with his son Shedeur. You're leaving your son out to dry because you want to pad his stats. You don't run the ball. You lie to the media saying that the offensive line, there's no run game. So Alton McCaskill can't run. All of a sudden, these offensive linemen, they can't block the run, but they can. But it's okay for them to block for your son, but you don't want them to block for the running backs. Wow. This is not right. He promised these kids something. For you to flip a recruit to come to HBCU, you must have promised them the world. And he gave Travis everything. You're going to get to play offense and defense. And then his son, his true blood son, Shedeur. Follow me. I'm going to take you away from Jackson State. I built a name for you a little bit. Let's go to a Power 5 conference so you can try to win the Heisman. So, because if you win the Heisman, you'll be drafted high. Because right now, you're at the HBCU. No one really pays attention to HBCUs. You may not get the recognition, but let's go. And that's okay if a father wants to do that. But do not do that at the expense of the team. Those other players have parents too, Coach Prime. And you promise those players something. I'm not saying you promise them that we're going to play, but you got to use the fact. That's like having a kicker but never punting. That's like always going for it on fourth down and then saying, oh, we don't have a punt game. You have a punter, use your punter. You have a running back, use your running backs. You don't run the ball. You don't run the ball, and then when you run the ball, there's no commitment to it because you're running different running backs, and neither one of them gets into a rhythm. Guess how many times a UCLA running back ran the ball? I forgot his name, but he ran the ball by himself 20 times. Combined, all the running backs from Colorado who all got in the game didn't run the ball 20 times. Alton ran it twice. McCaskill ran it twice. Dillon ran it 3 times. Wilkerson ran it twice. Hankerson ran it 3 times. So you do the math. That's not up to 20 times. You're not committing to the run. I knew there was a problem in the Stanford game when Colorado was up by 29 points by halftime. And then when you look at the overall statistics of the game, it still showed Stanford running the ball more than Colorado. That's when I start to scratch my head. Teams that are up usually run the ball more to kill the clock. And Coach Prime knows this. It's not something that I know that he doesn't know. But when you have an agenda and you have a narrative that you're trying to push, if you're trying to push your son to be in the Heisman talks, then you're going to abandon the run. And that's selfish and that's disingenuous from what you're telling people. You came to the win? No, you didn't come to the win. You came to build your son's statistics. And I didn't think that would be something that a Hall of Fame athlete who played on numerous teams would do. It's just sad. So that's my turning point. I'm going to be rooting for the offensive linemen. I'm going to be rooting for the running backs. I'm going to be rooting for the Carmani, McLeans of the world, the people on the team who are not playing, the people on the team that are not getting recognition because of the father's bias towards his own son. Leaving in your son at the last 6 minutes of a game, that's a blowout. Are you kidding me? Your son's limping around. Put him out. Let him ice the game. Put in the backup quarterback. Nah, I don't want to see any other quarterback there but my son. This is crazy. All right, man. Bye.